Hello, in this lesson you will learn how to combine irregular verbs and adjectives with sentence endings, suffixes, particles, and grammatical constructions. Just like any other language, Korean also has irregular verbs and adjectives. They can be divided into 6 categories. When a verb or an adjective stem ends with 비읍, 디귿, 시옷, 히읗, or 으, are followed by a vowel, something happens to these consonants. They are either replaced by another letter or they just get vanished. Also, when a verb or an adjective stem that ends with 리을 is followed by 시옷, 니은, or 으, these letters drop. Keep in mind that not all verbs and adjectives whose stem ends with these consonants are irregular. Let's learn how to conjugate irregular verbs and adjectives whose stem ends with 비읍. When they're followed by a vowel, 비읍 changes to 우. Take a look at how you can use them with sentence endings, different particles, and grammatical constructions. 가깝다 is an adjective. 가까워요, 가까웠어요, 가까우세요, 가까워서. All these grammatical constructions start with a vowel. 어, 으, and 어. That's why when we attach them to the stem 가깝, 비읍 changes to 우. And now our stem is 가까우, not 가깝, okay? And it ends with the vowel 우. That's why here you need to use 세요 instead of 으세요. There are 2 exceptions to the rule. A verb 돕다, to help, and an adjective, 곱다, lovely, beautiful. When their stem is followed by a vowel 아, 비읍 changes to 오, not 우, okay? 도와요 and 고와요. As I mentioned earlier, not all verbs and adjectives whose stem ends with 비읍 are irregular. Most of them are regular. For example, a verb 잡다, to catch. When its stem is followed by a vowel, 비읍 doesn't change to 우. 잡아요, 잡았어요, 잡으세요, 잡아서. Pause the video, read the sentences for yourself, and try to translate them into English. Once you're done, play the video again to see my translation. 오늘은 날씨가 더워요. The weather is hot today. 제 할머니께서 저를 도우세요. My grandmother is helping me. 제 친구가 저를 도와요. My friend is helping me. Here, 비읍 is changed to 우 because it is followed by a vowel which is not 아. I use an honorific particle 이세요 to show respect to grandmother. And here, 비읍 is changed to 오 because it's followed by 아. In the next 2 sentences, I used regular verbs 잡다, to catch, and 씹다, to chew. 저는 물고기를 잡았어요. I caught a fish. And 저는 음식을 씹어요. I'm chewing food. You'll find more regular and irregular verbs and adjectives at the end of this lesson and also in the description box of the previous lesson. Okay, the next category is verbs and adjectives whose stem ends with 디귿. When the stems are followed by a vowel, 디귿 changes to 리을. 듣다, 들어요, 들었어요, 들으세요, 들어서. And when regular verbs and adjective stems are followed by a vowel, 디귿 doesn't get changed. 받다, 받아요, 받았어요, 받으세요, 받아서. Pause the video and try to translate these sentences into English. 제가 음악을 5시까지 들었어요. I listened to music until 5 o'clock. 제 여동생이 저한테 질문을 물었어요. My younger sister asked me a question. 제가 오늘은 친구한테서 선물을 받았어요. Today I got a present from a friend. And 할아버지께서 문을 닫으세요. Grandfather is closing a door. The next category is verbs and adjectives whose stem ends with 시옷. When they're followed by a vowel, 시옷 disappears. 짓다, 지어요, 지었어요, 지으세요, not 지세요. Okay? And 지어서. You can think of this as an exception. And on the right-hand side, the verb 웃다 is regular, so nothing happens to 시옷 when it's followed by a vowel. Again, there are 4 sentences. Pause the video and try to translate them into English. It's a good practice for you, so don't skip it. Okay, 제 부모님께서 작년에 집을 지으셨어요. 작년 means last year and it's pronounced as 작년, not 작년, okay? If you read it as 작년, then you should watch the lesson number 5. This sentence means last year my parents built a house. 이 가방이 나아요. This bag is better. 교수님께서 웃으세요. Professor is laughing. 학생들은 손을 씻었어요. School students washed hands. Here I didn't use a plural form particle 들. As I mentioned, very often the plural form particle 들 is omitted. The next category is verbs and adjectives whose stem ends with hiot. When hiot is followed by a vowel, hiot disappears. In addition to that, when hiot is followed by a vowel o, this o, which is part of the stem, and another o, which is part of particle, suffix, or grammatical construction, they both disappear and get replaced with a double vowel 에. 어때요? 어땠어요? 어때서? And here, since hiot is not followed by a vowel o, this o did not get replaced by the double vowel 에. And on the right hand side, you can see that in regular verbs and adjectives, hiot doesn't drop. 넣어요? 넣었어요? 넣으세요? 넣어서. The next category is verbs and adjectives whose stem end with the letter 으. When 으 is followed by either a or o, 으 disappears. 크다, 커요, 컸어요, 커서. And when 으 is followed by another vowel, for example 으, then this 으, which is a part of a stem, just stays there. It doesn't go anywhere. There is one exception to the rule. When 으 is preceded by 리을, or it's better to say when a verb or an adjective stem ends with 르, and then followed by either a or o, this 르 changes to double 리을. 빠르다, 발라요, 발랐어요, 발라서. And lastly, if a verb or an adjective stem, which ends with 리을, is followed by either 시옷, 니은, or 으, then 리을 drops. So we have the verb 팔다, which means to sell. There are 2 variants of polite formal sentence endings, 습니다 and 씁니다, right? So if a stem ends with a consonant, we should attach 씁니다. This is the rule. But since 씁니다 starts with 시옷, 리을 drops. Now we got a new stem, 파, without the consonant 리을, which ends with the vowel. And because of that, now we need to use the sentence ending 니다 instead of 씁니다. Because the rule says if a stem ends with a vowel, we should use 니다. So the final result is 팝니다, not 밟습니다 or 받습니다. There are a few grammatical constructions in the Korean language that starts with 니은. For example, 느라고. 느라고 means because of. It explains a reason. But please don't take any notes about 느라고 because there are at least 5 ways to say because of in the Korean language. Each of these grammatical constructions has a nuance and they are used in different situations. So you should know exactly when to use them. That's why please don't take any notes about 느라고. I just picked this grammatical construction to show you how to conjugate irregular verbs and adjectives when they're followed by a grammatical construction that starts with 니은. So when 리을 is followed by 니은, 리을 drops. 파, 느라고. The next case is when 리을 is followed by 으. In such situations, 리을 also drops. Now our stem is 파, which is why we need to attach 세요 or 쉬어요 instead of 으세요 or 으셔요. 파세요, 파셔요. However, there is one exception to this rule. We haven't learned this grammatical construction yet, but I thought it would be better if I explained this exception in this lesson. So this grammatical construction is 이러고, 러고. It means going to do something. So when we attach it to verb or adjective stems that end with 리을, 리을 doesn't drop, it stays there. In addition to that, instead of 이러고, you need to use 러고, 하려고. We'll talk about this grammatical construction in more detail in the future lessons. Here is the list of most commonly used irregular and regular verbs and adjectives. And this is a list of new words we are going to be using in the next lesson.